Why would you even think about buying a home right now? This is a comment that I see frequently on my videos. As real estate agents, of course, we always tell you, hey, it's always a good time to buy, you don't want to miss out, and all that kind of stuff. But really, people are still buying homes even though prices are historically high, along with historically high interest rates. Why are people buying houses? Well, we're going to talk about that today, and then later on in the video, I'll tell you why you absolutely should not think about buying a house right now. One of the reasons why you would buy a house right now is if you have the ability to, and you're at a time in your life where it makes sense. For a lot of people, it's really difficult to buy a home right now because of the lack of affordability. There's low inventory, meaning there's not a lot of houses out there to choose from. And if you do find a house that you like, it can be really difficult to get under contract. But if you have the ability to, meaning you've got the means, aka money and plenty of savings, and you're at a time in your life where it makes sense to buy a home, meaning you're not looking to sell the home in the next year or two because you're going to buy a small home now and grow your family and buy a bigger home, things like that, you really do have to be in a time of your life where it makes sense to buy a home and you can commit to living in the home for a long time. It could be difficult to get a loan in the near future. Another reason you might buy a home right now is if you think the economy is going to get worse. It could get difficult to get a loan in the near future, like how it was after the 2008 crash. And if you remember back then, basically you couldn't get a mortgage. Banks were not giving out loans. If you're concerned that something like that is going to happen, then maybe it makes sense to buy a home now. Now, there's a few flaws in that thinking because, of course, if the economy is going to get worse, maybe you would be afraid that you would lose your job, or maybe you would want to have savings just in case something happens. And then two, if the economy worsens, the thought is that home prices will drop, and then it could be a good opportunity to buy. But of course, if you're going to obtain a loan and banks aren't giving out loans, that would be a problem for you. Are you looking to turn your dream of homeownership into a reality? Go to workwithdanG.com where I'll match you with a real estate agent. There's also a complimentary home buyer's course and some handy resources like an affordability calculator. Let's kickstart your home journey together. The link is in the description. Another reason why people are buying homes now is if they find a home they really like and they don't want to pass up the opportunity because, again, right now we do have really low inventory. There aren't a lot of houses coming on the market. And I don't know how it is where you are, but I will say even the homes that come on the market, it's pretty slim pickings out there. One of the clients that I'm working with now is having a really hard time finding a home that makes sense for them. If you do find a home that you like, it might make sense to buy it now and not let the opportunity pass you by. Again, if you have the means. Another reason why you would buy a home now is if you plan on living in the home for a long time. You're not as worried if there is a housing market crash because you're going to live there for a long time and weather the storm. What I'm recommending for people right now is to commit to about 10 years of owning the home, which I'll say is a little bit on the aggressive side. I do hear other people suggesting close to 5 years, but it seems like it may take a while for whatever is going to happen in the housing market to happen and for it to crash or have a downturn or whatever you want to call it. And then of course there would be the building up period and being able to gain equity in the home and to have your home worth more than what you bought it for if there is some sort of crash or downturn and home prices fall drastically. If you don't mind weathering the storm and living in the home for about 10 years or more, it can make sense to buy a home now. Also, if you're tired of renting and want to buy a home, that's a major reason why people will buy homes right now because they're trying to get out of the rental market. They want a more predictable monthly payment. They want to have a predictable life because I've heard of people within the past couple of years that have rented a house and then their landlord decided to sell the house or they increased the rent and they weren't able to afford it anymore. Trying to get out of that rental rat race makes sense. Now, of course, the biggest barrier is affordability. Another reason why you might buy now is because interest rates are decreasing, making homes more affordable. I've seen some articles recently talking about how now that interest rates have fallen, homes are more affordable, which is true because if you're not familiar with interest rates, basically the higher the interest rate, the higher monthly payment will be. If interest rates are lowering, then the monthly mortgage payment is going to be less. Through that lens, technically, homes are more affordable, but we're humans in the world and we know that homes are not affordable right now, even if interest rates go down. Even if they went down to 3%, for instance, I think a lot of people would say housing is still unaffordable. But when you put it into perspective, if you are someone who's looking at potentially buying a home, then the interest rates falling might encourage you to buy a home sooner than later, especially if you're concerned that the interest rates might go up again. Another reason why you might buy a home now is that home prices prices may keep increasing, which I know is a little bit of a controversial statement, especially if you think, why would you buy a home now? Because most likely you're thinking that home prices will drop significantly when there's a housing market crash. Now, the reality is we don't know if there's going to be a housing market crash or not. Possibly. The way things are looking right now, it doesn't seem like there would be, but there's so many variables, it's really hard to say. And when you think about it, home prices increased about 40% within the last few years, which is wild because typically home prices appreciate about 3 to 5% each year. 40% within the past few years is a huge bump. Now, when there was the 2008 housing market crash and home prices dropped, obviously it took a while for the home prices to drop to their lowest, but when they did, it was about 20 to 30%. Home prices would have to drop even more than they did in 2008 to just even out to what home prices were before the pandemic. In most markets, I'm seeing that home prices are increasing, and we may not see that slow down. Now, of course, I don't believe it's going to be increasing as much as it has been, but just with the low inventory and the demand that we still have for people to buy a home, I think that home prices are going to increase. Now, a little caveat there, real estate is hyperlocal, so I am aware that there are markets where they have softened and prices have not increased, and they've actually dropped. But if you look at real estate nationally, home prices keep on increasing. If you're worried that home prices are going to keep increasing and it's going to price you out of the market, then it might make sense to buy sooner than later. Now, why I wouldn't suggest people buying now is because the economy is so unpredictable right now. It's really hard to guess what might happen. If you're someone who's kind of like 50-50 right now, should I buy now? Should I not buy? Or if you're someone who you're not as financially stable as you'd like to be, and you don't feel like you're really financially ready or as ready as you'd like to be to buy a home, then I think it makes sense to not buy a home right now. Because buying a home right now is a huge commitment for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned in this video, like probably needing to live in the home for a long time. Because if there is some sort of crash or something like that and home prices do decrease, then there's the concern that you might be underwater on your mortgage, which means you owe more on your home than it's actually worth. Buying a home right now is really tricky. You have to follow your gut and use logic to determine if you should buy a home in the near future. Check out this video about home prices dropping or this video about if you should buy a home or not. Thanks for watching to the end, especially if you're a subscriber.